welcome. It is Sunday evening. Let me adjust my thing here a little bit. It's Sunday evening, and it is time for me to sing and play the piano and read you some from the Bible and tell you my thoughts on it. And I have an interesting subject today, something kind of different, but this is something I have had for a little while. This came to me quite a while back, but I found it really interesting, and I'm calling this Science and the Bible. So I know a lot of people think that science and the Bible don't agree. And my opinion is, if science and the Bible don't agree, either the science is wrong, because, they come up all the time with new things saying, oh, well, we thought such and such was true, but now the modern science really tells us that this is what's true. And a lot of science is a theory. But there is some science that you can get to the correct science. So it's either that you just haven't gotten to the correct science, or it's that you're not understanding the Bible, or you just don't know something is there in the Bible. I feel that if you have the correct science and an understanding of the Bible, the science and the Bible are not going to conflict. So you can be a Christian and still believe in science as long as it is the accurate science. Because like I said, you get people all the time that come up with something new and say, well, we used to believe that such and such was true in science, and now we found out that's not right. So, if you get to the correct thing, it won't disagree with the Bible as long as you're interpreting the Bible right as well. So, I had come upon this, this was probably last year, but I had come upon this at one time, and there's all kinds of theories as to how the earth was created and how the earth came to be. I'm talking about scientific theories now. And now, of course, as a Christian, the Bible tells us that God created the heavens and the earth and everything in it, and I believe that. However, I don't know exactly every little method that he used, right? So there are all kinds of theories, such as, the Big Bang theory, that there was a Big Bang and then everything went out. But see, I've also heard that theory's been debunked. Well, which is correct? I don't know. Now, does it really matter? Not really. Because I believe if there was a Big Bang or there was not a Big Bang, I believe God did it. So if he did a bang or he didn't do a bang, he did however it was. And then there's all kinds of other ideas. But this one is interesting. Genesis 1 through 2 says, in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. Now, the person who wrote Genesis, as a human being, would not know that when the earth was created, and this is another thing that science tells us, is that when the earth was created, it was most likely, started creating this planet from debris in the atmosphere. I don't know if that's true, because, I don't know if that's correct, but this is one of the ideas. And that when the earth first started forming, it was misshapen and was not like what it is now. Well, this Genesis 1 and 2 tells us that, and the earth was without form and void, which means empty. It had no form. It was a big lump of misshapen stuff. Well, there's scientific theory that says that. So what does that tell us? Well, if that's correct, the Bible tells us that it was without form and void when God first made it. So that's most likely going to be the correct science. But it's interesting, isn't it, that the writer of Genesis could not have known that the earth, before it had humans or anything in it, they could not have known the earth was first created without form unless God told them. So this shows you that all of the stuff in the Bible had to come actually from God, that he gave it to men. It just didn't come from men's ideas, that it was inspired. They were inspired of God to write these things. So there couldn't have been a man alive on this earth that would have known that God created the earth. When he first created it, it would have had no form. Nobody could have known that. They wouldn't have been here. The only way they could have known it is if God revealed it to them. So I had come across this theory recently, like I said, a few months ago, that says that the animals and everything that we have on the earth now kind of crawled up out of the muck and mire of the earth. So they kind of like just crawled up out of the mud. And these creatures, these living things, they crawled up out of the mud and they became animals. And when I first heard that, I thought, oh, that's crazy. That can't be right. Where did they come up with that crazy thing? But they're saying, like, because we're created from the earth, somehow these creatures just crawled up out of the mud and the muck. And when I first heard that, I thought that was crazy. And one day I was reading Genesis, and I mentioned, I think last week, that I love to read Genesis because there's so many stories in Genesis, and they're all interesting, even for kids. And it moves pretty fast. You know, you go through quite a bit of time in Genesis. It doesn't drag. And so, and if you're going to start reading the Bible, you know, a lot of people just start in Genesis. So I've read so much in Genesis. And so I was reading this verse in Genesis. This is Genesis 1, 24 and 25, right? Listen to what this says. And this is talking about the creation. Of course, the first chapter of Genesis talks about creation. And this is talking about the creation of the animals. So we know God created, he said, let there be light. Then he said, created the heavens and the earth. And then it says then he created the water. You know, it's got the order of everything. Well, this is when he was creating the animals. And I read this, and suddenly it struck me what this actually said. It says, and God said, let the earth bring forth the living creature after his kind, cattle and creeping thing, and beast of the earth after his kind, and it was so. Okay, so this is where he's talking about the animals being created. But what struck me is the first part of this sentence that actually says, and God said, let the earth bring forth. It didn't say God sat down and shaped every little animal. God created a dog, and God created a cat, and God created a cow, God created He could have done that, but that's not what this says. It says, God said, let the earth do it. Let the earth bring forth. And I went, okay. God told the earth to make the animals. According to this, let the earth bring forth the living creature. God told the earth to make the animals. Did you realize God told the earth? God said, let the earth bring forth. He's saying, earth, create animals. What does that mean? That means it is entirely possible they could have crawled up out of the muck and the mire. They could have. I don't know that. Now, they wouldn't have done it had God not spoken that. This is still God creating the animals. God still created the animals, because the very next verse says, and God made the beast of the earth after its kind, the cattle after their kind, and everything that creepeth on the earth after his kind. God saw that it was good. So it's still telling you God did it. But how did he do it? The first part says he spoke and said, let the earth bring forth. Let the earth do it. Earth, bring forth the animals, is what he said. So the science theory that says it is possible that animals crawled up out of the mud and just crawled up out of the earth and somehow crawled onto dry ground and were animals, that is entirely possible. I don't know 100% for sure because I wasn't there. I do know it was at the spoken word of God. But you see how the science saying it's possible that animals just crawled up out of the earth. It's actually possible that God did it that way. Okay, let's go back up. That was verse 24 and 25. Let's back up to verse 20. This is talking about, this was earlier before the animals when God made the fish. And it says, God said, let the waters bring forth abundantly the moving creature that hath life, and fowl that may fly above the earth in the open firmament of heaven. It's the same kind of thing. He's saying, let the water do it. Water bring forth. And did you find it interesting that he said, did you realize it said this? Let the water bring forth the moving creature and the fowl. Do you realize he told the water to bring forth the birds? Did you realize this? It said it that way? Let the water do it. So he could very well, God could do things in any fashion that he wants, and he could very well have told birds to fly up out of the water when he first created birds. Why? Maybe he liked it that way. So science and religion and science in the Bible are not as opposed as people think. Because if you really, and a lot of it I think is because people don't really know what the Bible says. Did you know the Bible said let the waters bring forth animals? Did you know it said let the earth bring forth animals? Or did you just think it said God created the animals? It does say God created the animals, but it says how did he do it? He spoke to the earth and said, let the earth make the animals, is what he said. Did you know it said that? Most people don't realize what the Bible actually says, and that's why they think sometimes it's opposed to science. Then I also find it interesting to verse 26, when God said, "And let us make man in our image after our likeness." So I am perfectly okay with the theories that say God, or that we were created to adapt, and we adapt to our environment, and we adapt to change, and that over time animals and mankind have changed and adapted, or you could even say evolved. However, I do not believe that humans evolved from apes, because this is where God says this different. When he said about the fish and the birds, he says, "Let the waters bring forth those things." When he was talking about the animals, he said, "Let the earth bring forth the animals." But when it came to man, he said, "Now let us make man in our image." He didn't say, "Let man come from another species." He did not say that. And people have always read this verse, "Let us make man in our image," to say, well, okay, who was God talking to? And he said, us. He said, "Let us." Who's us? Well, I believe he was talking to the Holy Spirit and to his Son. "Let us three make man in our image." So he was talking to somebody. He didn't say in my image. He said our image. He did create man to be a three-part being. The body and the mind or soul and the spirit. Oh, thank you. And so, and God is 1 in 3, and we are kind of 1 in 3 too. We are, like I said, the mind and the spirit and the body. So we are created in the image of God, and that is correct. That's why I feel, God didn't create any of the animals or anything in his image. He created humans in our image. And that's another reason I do not believe that humans could have evolved from another creature, because the animals are not created with a spirit that's eternal. Now, I believe when we get to heaven, if you had a favorite pet, I loved my dog, whatever, God has the ability to bring that dog back to life, but I don't believe have an eternal spirit like we do. They definitely do not have the choice of morality like we do. So when God created man in his image, he also created man to be able to choose to do right or wrong. And none of the animals can choose. The animals don't know that. The animals have the instinct God gave them. They are adapting to a fallen world. God gave them the ability to adapt so they can survive. And they, I forgot else what I was going to say. But anyway, they don't have the choice of right and wrong. And they're trained. So they either have an instinct, or they've been trained by their parents, or they've been trained by people. So animals are trained, or they have instinct. They don't look like an animal that's a predator does not look at something else and say, "I want to go murder that person." Animals don't understand that. Now, animals were originally created where nobody was a predator. They all ate vegetation. No animals ate other things, but with the fall of the earth, and then animals had to learn to survive, all that changed. And God will change it back one day when he returns. But for now, it's all in a fallen state. So, but animals aren't like, if an alligator ate somebody, I live where alligators are. If alligators ate somebody, the alligator is not an evil thing. It's either trying to survive and eat, or and usually they'll only eat a person if they've been fed by people, because then they look at people and think food. And if you don't have food, then you are food. So that's actually not something they do naturally. But they're not trying to murder somebody. They've been conditioned to do that, and it's, like I said, it's in the fallen world. But animals are not like sinning. They can't do that because they don't have that capacity. They don't have the capacity to understand something is right or wrong. They only understand somebody wants me to do this, and they don't want me to do this if you've trained them. But they don't necessarily understand it's wrong. They don't understand sin. But humans were created to understand the difference in right and wrong, and we do. And now sometimes our ability to understand right and wrong is faulty. Sometimes we don't have good training, and sometimes we haven't, developed that. But we have the capacity to understand things that are right and wrong morally, but animals do not. So I have a very hard time believing that some apes in an ancient world suddenly became humans and also somehow got a spirit and can suddenly understand the difference of right and wrong. So I don't think that could all happen at all. And I also find it interesting. I read this one time and I thought, oh, isn't that interesting? And also I have a living example of this, that people said, well, we evolved from apes because we're so much like apes. did you know that biologically our DNA, now we do share some DNA with the animal kingdom because we are a mammal. You know, we're kind of like an animal. We do have things in common because God created all of us kind of out of the same things. He created us out of the stuff of the earth. So yes, we have some DNA in common with animals. But did you know that we are not, our closest kin in the animal kingdom is not the ape? Did you know it is not the ape? Our DNA, we share more DNA with a different animal than we do an ape. Apes are not our closest relative. So I thought, oh, I didn't, because I had always thought, oh, that's why we came from apes, because we were so much like them. Did you know we are not the closest DNA to them? And I thought that was very interesting. So do you know what animal shares human DNA that's the closest to DNA to a human? You're going to be surprised. Do you know what animal it is? It is a pig. Did we evolve from pigs? No, I don't believe that either. But why do I say I have living proof or a living example of this? My dad had bypass surgery, over 15 years ago now, and he also had a very damaged aortic valve. And they had to replace it. And he had two options, either a mechanical one, which is you're more likely to reject because it's not living tissue, either a mechanical one or an aortic valve from a pig. He chose the aortic valve from a pig. He has a pig valve. Why did they use a pig and not an ape valve? Because we are genetically closer to pigs. We are more likely to accept a body organ or body part from a pig than we would be from anything else, because we are genetically closely related to pigs. But yet, I don't believe we evolved from them. We just happen to have closer DNA to them. So that kind of shoots that out a little bit out of the water. But even though I have always read this verse, the 26th verse of 1 Genesis 1, not 1 Genesis 1:26, where it says, let us make man in our image. You know, I've always heard that part explained, that God is talking to the Son and the Spirit, and let us make man in our image. I've always heard that explained. That part I've got. God created us. I do not believe he got us from another animal. He created us separately. But I never caught this until I started reading this part where it says, God said, let the earth bring forth the living creatures. Okay, so God said, earth, you create the animals. Waters, you create the fish and all the water creatures and the fowls of the air, apparently. The water created the birds. The water created the fish. That's what this says. The earth created the animals. And then when it came to man, God said, let us do it. God didn't tell the earth to create man. God didn't tell the water to create man. God told nobody to create man. God said, let us do it. Why did God choose to create man? Even though ultimately he created everything, because the Bible does say this right here, such as, and God made the beast of the earth. Okay, God still did it, but he did it by directing the earth. Earth, you bring forth animals. Water, you bring forth fowl and fish. So he did it by speaking to them and telling them to do it. But when it came to man, he didn't speak to earth or anybody and tell them to create it. He said, let us do it. Let us make man in our image and after our likeness. So he chose that, to do that specially. Oh, no, comes to man, we're doing that. We're not going to say, earth, create the man, even though he made us out of earth. But he did it by his own hand, especially much more than how he created the animals and the fish and the birds, I'd say. Then, Psalm 19:1 says, the heavens are telling of the glory of God, and their expanse is declaring the work of his hands. Even without the Bible, it says the heavens tell of God, and the expanse, which I think means the sky is declaring the work of his hands. Everything in God created is screaming that he created it, if you just have the capacity to understand it. Isaiah 40:12 says, who has measured the waters in the hollow of his hand? This is telling you how powerful and how huge he is. The waters, he's got the waters in the hollow of his hand. And marked off the heavens by the span. His span of his hand can mark off the heavens. That's a big hand. And calculated the dust of the earth by the measure. and weighed the mountains in a balance and the hills in a pair of scales. God knows what the hills and the mountains weigh. He has measured the dust. He's measured the waters, and he can put his hand across the expanse of our sky. That is the God that created this stuff. Isaiah 40:22, same chapter a little bit later, says, "It is he who sits above the circle of the earth." You know what's interesting about this? And I mentioned this in a live a long time ago. It says the circle of the earth. You know what that says? Isaiah, pretty old book. It's telling us the earth is round, the circle of the earth. He's sitting above. Did you know people say, oh, people in the Bible thought the earth was flat? Because that back in that ancient day, they thought the earth was flat. Oh, there were people who thought the earth was flat. But God knew it wasn't. And when he inspired Isaiah, he had him write, "It is he who sits above the circle of the earth." How did Isaiah know the earth was a circle? God revealed that to him. "And its inhabitants are like grasshoppers." Again, he's showing how big God is. "Who stretches out the heavens like a curtain and spreads them out like a tent to dwell in." Psalm 104:5. "He established the earth upon its foundations so that it will not totter forever and ever." Okay, how did they know that? How did they know the earth was on an axis and rotating on its axis, and that it stays in a certain position? It doesn't totter and go round and round like. How'd they know that? They didn't know that. They didn't have the science for that back then. God revealed it to them. That is true. The earth does not totter around. God has it on leaning a certain way on its axis, and it revolves around on that. It doesn't wobble around. And how do they know it didn't do that? Somebody who wrote Psalms knew that? They couldn't have known that science. But God did. And it's in there. Colossians 1:17 says, "He is before all things, and in him all things hold together." If it wasn't for him, everything would all fall apart. The whole earth would fall apart. It says he is before all things. That means he was here before he created any of this. And in him all things hold together. Job 26:7-8. 26:7-8. "He stretches out the north over empty space and hangs the earth on nothing." How did they know the earth was hung on nothing? How did they know that? How did they know there wasn't something holding it up? They didn't see the whole earth. How did Job know that? How did he know that? God revealed it to him. But see, it was correct. What I'm telling you is that's the correct science. The earth, it's in empty space and it's hung on nothing. There's nothing holding the earth in place. There's not some, pole. There's nothing holding. That's correct. And it's in the Bible. And they could not have known that unless God revealed it to them. "He wraps up the waters in his clouds, and the clouds do not burst under them." How did they know the water was kept in the clouds? Oh, I'm sure they knew it fell when it rained. But how did they know it was stored there? How did they know it collected there? How did they know that it's just that the clouds were vapor? How would they know that? They didn't have the science to know that. But it's correct because God revealed it to them. "He obscures the face of the full moon." How did they know he was doing that? Sure, they knew the moon disappeared during the day. But how did they know he was just obscuring it? How did they know it was actually still there? Some people used to think the moon disappeared and would reappear. And the moon disappeared and then would reappear. But God knew that wasn't when he was obscured the face of the moon. They couldn't see it when it was on the other side. "He drew a circular horizon on the face of the waters." There it is again, another verse. Circular horizon. Did Job know that the earth was not flat? Probably in himself he didn't. But God knew, and he had Job put the correct thing in here. Or whoever actually wrote Job. "He drew a circular horizon on the face of the waters at the boundary of light and darkness." And then Genesis 6:3 says, "Then the Lord said," okay, well, this is another thing. All right, this is another thing. I got to tell you this first, and then I'm going to read that. This was another thing I had thought about. And anytime I see something in science, I always look at it like, okay, I wonder if that's correct. And if it is there something about that in the Bible? So this was another thing that's been in science for a long time, quite a long time. And it has said that they have found remains and DNA and stuff of an ancient form of man. An ancient different kind of human that they said has a little different DNA than what we have now. So they said there was, and that's like the Neanderthal or Neanderthal, however you say it. That's that, like that era of man. And that the modern humans, they say, no, that's kind of a different. Well, this is what science is saying, that, you know, they evolved from somewhere else. Well, I don't believe we evolved from some other creature or something. Because I believe God created us. And I believe we would actually be descended from those people if they are actually another form of human that they found. And that's not an incorrect interpretation. But if that's correct, but that science is pretty strong, that it says there's an ancient form of man, and it's kind of different from humans today. They have some different DNA. And I got to thinking about that one day, thinking, now I wonder if that's correct. So if it's correct, that there's an ancient man. Now we know there was ancient men, but if it's different than the modern man, now we know God created us to adapt and change, but still I got to wondering specifically what would be different. So if there was an ancient human, and that we're kind of a different kind of human now, science is trying to interpret that their way. But I got to thinking about that and thinking, could there be something about the Bible, in the Bible, about that? Not directly. God didn't say, suddenly I changed man's DNA. You know, it doesn't say that. But I got to wondering, could there be something in the Bible to give me a hint that would tell me, could that be correct? Because some things they find in science, like I said, they later find out they were wrong. But if it's not wrong, how could it be correct? How could that be in the Bible? Is it in the Bible? Could it be in the Bible? Is there something in the Bible? So I got to thinking, okay, well, I know there was an ancient man. You know, I know there was man. God created man. Would there have been something that said suddenly man changed? So I started thinking, where would that be? What would that be? What would be in the Bible? I thought of this and went, aha! I found something. Now, do I know that for sure that that's what this means? No, I have no idea. I have no idea if we have an ancient human and a modern human. I don't know if that's even correct. So I don't know if this is right, but I do know it potentially fits. And I got to thinking about this. So this is still in Genesis. And as you know, Genesis covers a big time frame. Big time frame. Genesis 6:3. Now, when this is set is right before the flood. This is right before God went to Noah and told him to build the ark. So right before then, God said this, Genesis 6:3. Then the Lord said, my spirit will not put up with humans for such a long time. And then there's also a different version that says, I will not always deal with man, something like that. My spirit will not put up with humans for such a long time, for they are only mortal flesh. In the future, their normal lifespan will be no more than 120 years. Okay, so what happened? What happened? Suddenly, people who had been living for 900 years suddenly died at 120. And I had often wondered, how did that happen? I mean, I know it happened because God said it, but what was the cause? I mean, God didn't just start killing people at 120. And I thought, well, maybe there was just more sickness. That's possible. I don't know if there was more sickness or somehow we became more susceptible to sickness than we had been before. But what happened? Could God have changed man's DNA at that point? So the science of people who say there was an ancient form of humans, that's like Neanderthal man or something, that there's an ancient form of humans whose DNA is a little different than our DNA. So therefore there were like two types of humans. Could it be when God said man is no longer going to live 900 years, it's going to stop at 120? Could that be when God changed something in the humans? And now we're a different form of human. Doesn't say exactly what he did or exactly how he did it or what he said, other than your lifespan's going to be no more than 120. Something had to change in the human body at that time that suddenly people didn't live 900 years anymore. Then I got to wondering, when exactly did that happen? Because it didn't happen right away. Now, this, to me, I think it's similar to Adam and Eve. You know, God told Adam and Eve, the day that you sin, you will die. Well, they didn't physically die that day. They ate of the tree. did they die? Spiritually, they instantly died. Physically, they began to die. Their body began to decay. Took hundreds of years for them to die because they lived 900 years. So technically, the spiritually instant death. Physical, they actually began. They were in the process of dying. It just took so long. So yes, it was true the minute he spoke it or when they did it, but it didn't take effect instantly. So I got to wondering, when did this 120 years take effect? So he spoke this before he told Noah to build the ark. Man will no longer live longer than 120 years, and that's kind of an average. Noah, however, so I looked all these up. I looked up Noah, and it lists, you know how the Bible has all those, this one begat, that one begat, that one begat, that one begat, that one, and you wonder, what on earth is that for? Why is that there? Well, there's a couple reasons. One, God wanted to show that he had Jesus, the Son of God, he promised it to Abraham and to King David, and he had to show that it went through that line. So he has the lineage of Jesus from Adam. He's got that lineage in the Bible, so he has the proof. This has like the historic lineage of Jesus in there. But he has other people in there too. So I found a reason for this because I thought, well, when did people start dying? At 120 or so. So Noah still lived to 950. So even though I looked all these people up, even though God said man will live no more than 120 years, Noah still lived 950. Why is that? Well, it hadn't quite taken effect yet, apparently. So then it follows the lineage of Shem. This particular section I was reading, and I'm sure the other ones have some too, but let's just follow Shem. And then everybody after is a descendant of Shem. And so Shem lived to 500. Oh, wait a minute. So it went from 950 to 500. So cut in half in one generation. So from Noah to his son lived just a little more than half of what Noah did. Still not 120. Then he had Arphaxad. Arphaxad lived to 430. Dropped a little bit more. Shelah lived to 433. Eber lived to 464. So those three are kind of all the mid-400s. That stayed there. Then Peleg was the next person, 239. Woo, we cut it in half again. So 950, then Shem 500, then 3 or 4 people in the mid-400s, and then suddenly we're in the mid-200s. Dropped pretty drastically. Then Reu, also 239. Sherug, 230. Then Nahor, that's Abraham's grandfather, by the way. Nahor, 148. Oh, we've dropped another 100 years, but we're still above 120. Nahor, 148. Terah, who was Abraham's father, or Terah, 205. Abraham lived 175 years. Isaac, 180. Jacob, 147. And here you finally hit it. Joseph lived 110 years. That's about where it hit. So it took 14 generations from the time God said, man will only live 120 years till he started living 120 years, was 14 generations. But I think if that is correct, that there is an ancient form of man that's not quite 100% related to us, I think God changed it. And I think the Bible tells you right there he did. Even though it was kind of vague. But if you like to kind of search out mysteries, I kind of like to search out mysteries, and to me that's a little bit of a possible answer to a possible mystery. That how did man suddenly just up and change and start dying at 120? Other than I know it's because God said they would, but what happened in their body that made that happen? I just thought, well, they started getting a lot sicker. But some people didn't necessarily die because they were sick. They just died because they were old, which now was 120. So why was that? Why were their body aging faster now? Why was it aging faster now? Other than because God just said it, but what happened in the body that was causing it? God possibly could have changed our DNA. So we started aging faster and not living as long because that's what he wanted to do. And maybe that's why there is ancient man that is a little different than modern man. Because somewhere written in the Bible, God changed man a little bit. I also often wondered if it had something to do with the fact that when the and I didn't look up this verse, but it's after the ark lands and they come out of the ark. After they come out of the ark, it says God tells them, I'm giving you every beast of the field as food. And I will put the fear of man in the animals. So apparently before the flood, animals were not afraid of people. Must not have been. Animals were not afraid of people, and they either were not eating animals or they weren't eating many animals. Now we know if Cain and Abel, we know Abel offered sacrifice of a lamb to God. I don't know if that meant they ate the lamb or if he just sacrificed it. But maybe they were only eating lambs. Maybe they didn't eat as much meat as, maybe they didn't eat it at all. Maybe he just sacrificed it and burnt it. But after the flood, he told man they could eat any, all of the creatures of the beasts of the field I'm giving to you for food. I'm wondering if God changing the diet of mankind had something to do with things changing. I don't know. There's just wondering. When he said you can start eating all the animals of the field, people started dying sooner. I don't know if that's related, but it is interesting, isn't it? Okay, so I am now going to sing a couple of songs, and those are just some interesting thoughts and observations I have about science in the Bible, and how you can look at science and say, well, that's not in the Bible, but maybe it is. Maybe something about that is in there and you just don't know and you haven't seen it. So I'm going to sing a couple songs. One is called The God I Know. And it is sung by a group, and I really don't know who they are. It's called Love and the Outcome. I've heard this song before, but it's another one that I've just heard the tune. Da, 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 and I've not really paid that much attention to the words. And one day this song came on, and suddenly the words were, I'm like, oh, that's got some neat words. That's a neat song. And I'm going to sing it, and it's really a wordy song. And it's really, it's not long, but it's got a lot of words, and it's kind of fast. I may not sing it quite as fast as it really goes. But I can't really play the whole song, so I'm just going to play the chords. But it's really a neat song called The God I Know. And like I said, I really I know God better than I know this song. Let's put it that way. Kind of sort of know this song, and I'm hoping I'm going to remember the tune of how all of it goes. If it was all about religion, what to do, what to say, what to wear on a Sunday, all about perfection, black and white, wrong or right, never gray, well, I'd never make it. I'd never be good enough. I try to walk that line, pray I find something that I know is real. Began to realize the harder I tried, the colder I'd start to feel, until the moment, the second I met your love. I threw my hands down, I threw my hands up, worries down. I remember when he showed me how to break up with my doubt. Once I was lost, but now I'm found. No strings attached when he saved my soul. I want you to know the God I know. Oh, you gotta know. Oh, the God I know. He is more than just a rescue. That's where it starts, not where it ends. Let freedom in. More than just a story in the sky, wearing white. He's alive every moment. And now that I know this love, I throw my hands up, worries down. I remember when he showed me how to break up with my doubt. Once I was lost, but now I'm found. No strings attached when he saved my soul. I want you to know the God I know. Oh, the God I know. Oh, the God I know. I throw my hands up, worries down. I remember when he showed me how to break up with my doubt. Once I was lost, but now I'm found. No strings attached when he saved my soul. I want you to know the God I know. Oh, the God I know. Oh, the God I know. What was I waiting for? I came alive when I let go. All I had was a broken heart. Then he held me in his arms. What was I waiting for? I came alive when I let go. All I had was a broken heart. Then he held me in his arms. I threw my hands up, worries down. I remember when he showed me how to break up with my doubt. Once I was lost, but now I'm found. No strings attached when he saved my soul. I want you to know the God I know. Oh, the God I know. Oh, the God I know. What was I waiting for? I came alive when I let go. I came alive when I let go. All I had was a broken heart. Then he held me in his arms. Isn't that a neat song? I just barely know it, but it's a good song. Then I'm going to sing one more for you. This is an old song written 1915. It's called This Is My Father's World. And I knew mostly this first verse. And I got to the third verse. This is amazing me lately that I'm getting some of these real old hymns that I haven't sang in a while and realize how much they're hitting home with our world right now. And I'm going to start, actually, this has 3 verses. I'm going to start with the third verse and sing that one first, and then probably sing it again afterward. But listen to this third verse. Sorry, I gotta have a drink of water. My throat's a little dry. Listen to this. This is my Father's world. Oh, let me never forget that though the wrong seems oft so strong, God is the ruler yet. This is my Father's world. The battle is not done. Jesus who died shall be satisfied, and earth and heaven be one. This is my Father's world, and to my listening ears all nature sings, and around me rings the music of the spheres. This is my Father's world. I rest me in the thought of rocks and trees, of skies and seas, his hand the wonders wrought. This is my Father's world. The birds their carols sing, the morning light, the lily white, declare their master's praise. This is my Father's world. He shines in all that's fair. In the rustling grass I hear him pass. He speaks to me everywhere. This is my Father's world. Oh, let me ne'er forget that though the wrong seems oft so strong, God is the ruler yet. This is my Father's world. The battle is not done. Jesus who died shall be satisfied, and earth and heaven be one. Who knew such an old song that's over 100 years old, 105 years old, says, this is my Father's world, the battle is not done. Oh, we're in a battle right now. And the battle is not done. I love where it says, Jesus who died shall be satisfied. You know what that means? God promised him that he would reap what he sowed with his death, and that he would reap a great harvest of souls. Jesus who died will be satisfied. The battle is not done. Heaven and earth one day will be one. That is so good. I'm going to read one more verse for you. It is Romans 1:20. For since the creation of the world, his invisible attributes, his eternal power and divine nature, have been clearly seen, being understood through what has been made, so that they are without excuse. Since the creation of the world, God's power and divine nature and his invisible attributes, it has been clearly seen. You can see the invisible, God's invisible power and invisible divine nature. It says it's been clearly seen. And how was it understood? It was understood through what has been made. God's creation is shouting his divine nature and his eternal power. If you just have the ability to understand it. And because he created it to glorify himself, it says that you are without excuse. You're not going to say, oh God, I didn't know. God created everything in this world for you to know him. That's why it's here. It is shouting his existence. And you are without excuse because he is shouting it from everything that lives. The earth, the sky, the trees, the animals, the water, the dirt, everything, the rocks, is saying we were created by God. So I'm going to go ahead and go, and I pray that you be blessed this week. And know that if the science is correct, the Bible will back it up. Because men in the Bible didn't know correct science, but God did. And he inspired them to write it. So I'm going to go and have a blessed week. And until next time, good night.